Hello there, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to touch upon a very interesting topic that I was actually using in my latest project. I was using the Nomad, Consul, Fabio, various of these DevOps tools, and I was very enthusiastic and curious about knowing like how these tools work behind the scene. That's why I decided to make this video. In this video, I'm going to explain you how you can use a Nomad to deploy your Docker images, your Docker container as a job in a Nomad, and you can orchestrate the deployment. So for those of who don't know what Nomad does, it's an orchestration tool that performs orchestration and the deployment of the Docker images in a decentralized manner. And the companies like SAP, eBay, they use the Nomad. It comes from the HashiCorp company, the same company which gives you various other tools like the Ansible, Terraform. So those tools perform really good when you have to automate the deployment, when you have to scale the deployment of your services. And we are going to take an example of one service that I have built in a backend, and we are going to see how we can deploy that on a Nomad cluster. So let's get started. Alright, so what we are going to do by end of this video is I will show you how to set up and install the Nomad on your operating system. We will also need to set up the Consul. So I'll show you like you also have to set up the Consul because Consul works in hand with the Nomad for the service discovery. And then we'll register the Nomad services, Nomad's client and the Nomad server in the Consul. And then I will show you in the Nomad how you can create a job for your services. So I'm taking a real world example of an Instagram post. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build a service in a Node.js, and that service will basically give me all the Instagram posts that I have. So the data about the post, like the comments, the description, user, likes or shares, whatever, all that post related data, I have developed one service, and that service returns data like this. Like it's a REST endpoint that gives you a data of the Instagram post. So this is my service in the Node.js I have developed. I want to run that service as a Docker image, then as a job in the Nomad. And that's what is our goal for this whole video. And I'm going to show you how you can do that from scratch. So without a further ado, let's get started. Okay, first thing, so we'll start with the installation of a Nomad. So I am on the Nomad official documentation, and they have steps for installing it on the various operating system. I did that for the Linux also, and now since I use a Mac OS for my personal stuff, I'm doing this for the Mac OS. So on the Mac, you just need a brew command. So we use a brew as a package installer. So I'm gonna just hit that brew tab, HashiCorp tab, and this is going to check for the update, and I'm gonna check if that package already exists or not. It just like checks that how many of the dependencies are present or not, and then this is the actual command where we do an installation. So I'll hit this command, brew install HashiCorp tab Nomad, and this should install, and I have put the dollar that I should not be putting, and this should install me a Nomad. So it's downloading Nomad binaries from the hashicorp.com, as you can see, and we'll have the installation in a couple of moments. And it seems that okay, installing, caveat, removing, and it seems like it has installed that. If I do a Nomad -v, then it should give me a version. So okay, the Nomad is installed. Then next thing is we have to install a Consul. So installing a Consul, we are gonna again use the brew. So let's hit the command brew tab to check if there is a connection. Yeah, there is a connection with the HashiCorp. Then we'll install the Consul, and it will also do that very quickly like a Nomad. So yeah, it's done. Again, we can check that using a Consul -v, and it should give me a version of a Consul. There we go, it looks good. So we have a Nomad and Consul installed. Now in a Nomad, we have to understand like there are two parts of it. One is the Nomad client and the Nomad server. Nomad server is like it manages how many servers you have. There is one leader server usually which has the total control over like how many nodes or the other servers are present. So it's like a topology or like a leader server architecture where there are multiple servers on which your services can be deployed, and then there are the clients on which you can check, through which you can actually deploy the jobs or the images on those servers. So it's like you have a server which is actually doing some kind of a stuff, and it's actually hosting your services. It's actually like the processing of the services, handling of the incoming requests. It's everything handled on the servers, and client is just a Nomad client, a web UI through which you can deploy a jobs. You can basically give an instruction to a server that, okay, I have this jobs, I have this many REST APIs or this many node services that I want to run. Now server, it's your responsibility that how you want to distribute that load. I have this specification, now the server will deploy all that. So in short, Nomad has two parts to it: Nomad server and the Nomad client. And what is the purpose of Consul here? Consul is just act as a service discovery. I'll come to that part, like what exactly I mean by service discovery. Now this was just the installation. If you have to run a Nomad agent, then you do a Nomad agent dev. So why we are passing a dev? As I was saying, like Nomad has a two component, server and the client. We usually run a server on a different machine and client on a different machine. That is possible. But since I'm showing things on my MacBook is going to act as a server and the client also. That's why I'm saying like run it in a dev mode, and dev mode allows me to do that, running a client and the server both on a single machine. That's why I'm passing this flag Nomad agent dev. So with this, it should start the Nomad, and what I can do is just create a new terminal. I'll just zoom in the things, and I can side by side do a Consul agent run also, and that will also be in a dev mode. So what I have now is a Consul and a Nomad both running. Now I can take you to my browser and show you like how it looks. So by default, Nomad client runs on the 4646 port. If I hit that, then you can see that, okay, I have the Nomad UI, and I can see the nice web UI of the Nomad. There are bunch of things, client server topology in the server. I'll see my name of my laptop, my user, and then a network on which I am. This is my Wi-Fi name, actually Fritzbox. That's why it has given that name. And in the client, you can see like what is the client. So as I was saying, like Nomad has two component, servers and the client. In the servers, you can scale it like to a multiple servers. Since I started in a dev mode, I have only one server, which is my MacBook, and in the client also I have my one client, which is again my MacBook, because I want to show your demonstration in a dev mode. If you are doing this in a production mode, then you are going to have a different servers, multiple servers, and in the client also you can have a multiple client. And a Consul runs on the 8500 port, if I'm not wrong. And in the Consul, you can say that, okay, I have a Nomad client and the Nomad and the Consul. So I was talking about a service discovery, what exactly a service discovery means. So when you deploy your jobs in a Nomad, it has to be discovered, because you are using this architecture, this topology, where you have multiple servers, and those servers gonna have a IP. Now how you know like on which server which your service is going to be, your request is going to be routed? Because let's say I have this Instagram post service running and it is been hosted on the multiple server, then how my client should know like to which server to point to? There are multiple servers in this topology, in this network. What is the IP of it? How I'm gonna know like on which port it is deployed? So Consul does that job, like deciding on which IP and which port to redirect a request. That is a job of a Consul, and it works perfectly well with a Nomad. When you have installation of a Nomad, and if there are jobs running, Consul automatically detects that, and it tells you, okay, I know I have this information that there is a job namely ABC. I know like on which IP that ABC job is running, what is the port of it, and I can redirect that. So that's what a service discovery means, and a Consul does that with along with a Nomad. There's another tool called Fabio, which actually takes the things to a next level. It takes care of doing a load balancing stuff. So if you have multiple servers and want to balance the load equally, which is actually a use case in the real world scenarios, in the production scenarios, Fabio does that really good through the DNS table concept, and it works perfectly well with a Consul and Nomad. Now we'll deploy an actual job that will be a set of instruction for the Nomad, that, okay, I have something, I have a Docker image, and that you have to run. You have to orchestrate that job process. So I'm going to take a very simple example first, then I'm going to go to our actual example of the Instagram post, just having a HTTP server that will echo some text on the port 8080, and I'm going to use a predefined Docker image for that. So then once we understand this, then I'm going to take you to the actual example that we have in the real world scenarios, like the Instagram post. So first thing, in order to create a job in the Nomad, you need to have a Nomad configuration file, a job file. So you can like put any extension to it. Usually I like to put it as .nomad or .scl, or that's what many people do. And then inside that you have to write an instruction about your job. So what is the job actually means. Job means like a set of instruction, like it contains an information about your Docker image, how you want to run it, how many nodes you want to use, whether you want to distribute over the clusters, all that stuff. So I know like these the terms that I'm using, maybe some of you maybe not be aware of it. These are the DevOps term, even I'm not completely aware, so I'll try to narrate them in a very simple way what I understand. So if I say something wrong, then please excuse me, I'm not a DevOps expert. So if I say something wrong, please correct me in the comment section. I'm not a DevOps expert. So what I have is a data center, and I'm using a data center 1. Why data center 1? Because if I go to the servers here somewhere, I see a name, data center 1 for my this machine on which my server is running. That's why I'm giving a data center 1 here. Then I have a group. I'm calling it as eco. You can call it whatever you want. Even a job you can call whatever you want. I'm doing a HTTP eco job here, that's why I'm just putting it like HTTP eco. It's a simple. Then I have a task for the server, and I'm saying like use a driver Docker. Why I'm using a Docker? Because the tasks or the service that I want to run through this HTTP eco job is actually a one Docker image, and I want to pull that Docker image and run it in the container, run it as a container in the Nomad job. So that's why I'm saying a Docker as a driver. Then I have a configuration of the image from where I'm going to pull this image. So it is going to come from the HashiCorp HTTP eco latest. So what this does, so if I just grab this and take you to a Docker hub, and I will show you like we have a image for HashiCorp HTTP eco. So you can see that we have HashiCorp HTTP eco, which is just a simple HTTP server. So what it will do is like on 8080 port, it will just create a simple service that print out a text called hello world. So that's a simple job. That's what we are trying to do here in this example. So I can pass the arguments like on which port I want to run 8080, then what is the text that I want to print out. So I'll say hello and welcome to my localhost running on port 8080 something. Then in the resources, we specify like the network, we specify like what port we want to use, and we can like give a nickname to that port. So here we are calling this port as HTTP, and the actual port number is 8080 for this port. So HTTP is just a nickname. How we run a Nomad job. So there is a command nomad job run, and then we have to pass the name of the our Nomad configuration file. So I'll pass the name of this configuration file, just hit enter. Then as you can see that it is logging something, and it says that they're deployed. So if I take you to the Nomad UI here, and if I go to a jobs, previously we had a 0 jobs. Now it says that the HTTP eco is there. It means that our command has registered our service of the HTTP eco, our Docker image, into a jobs here in Nomad, and it was deploying, and now apparently it is healthy. So it means that it is deployed, and we can see more information about it, like allocation status, how much CPU is reserved, how much memory is reserved for this job, then what is the real-time performance of it, like and there are a lot of stuff, like you can also get to know if it is consuming too much of memory or if it is draining the resources. You can get to know that from this various metrics available here. Okay, so does this really work? If I go to a local host, does this really work? Let's see. And yeah, it's running. So congrats, we successfully managed to deploy a Docker image of a custom service, something custom. I know we pulled it from the Docker hub. We are going to take to the next level our own custom, but for now we have managed to take managed to take a Docker image and load that as a job in our Nomad, and it went well. That's a good progress. So let's start from the blank slate. So let's create a empty Node.js project. I love using Yarn, and I'm going to provide a Y option so that it will quickly create it. I have it. Then I'm going to add a couple of my packages that I want to use. So I'm going to use a JSON server to simply host my post. So what I need here, I need a dev dependencies JSON server. I'm going to use that. I also need a type node and the TS node, because I'm going to write my code in the TypeScript that eventually will get transpiled to a JavaScript. And these are my scripts. If I want to run my service in the dev, then I will just simply do TS node app.ts build. If I want to just compile the TypeScript, let's get app.ts here. So this is my Node.js service. I'll import a JSON server. I'm going to create that, and from where I'm going to get a data from a db.json that I will create here, db.json. Inside that I'll have my data about the Instagram post. Then I'm going to have the middleware imported from the JSON server. Then I'm going to simply register that, and I want to run this on the port number 3000. That's why I'm providing 3000, and that's it. It will say that JSON server is running. And for the DB and for the JSON data, I have generated this data using ChatGPT Smart. And I'm gonna just simply put the data about the Instagram post, like the comment, text, timestamp. I have a lot of things over here. And this is actually, I try to make this as real as possible because I wanted to build something real UI, which looks something like Instagram post. That's why to do a yarn install, because I added a couple of things here in my package and I don't have those packages. As you can see that I don't have a node modules here, so I'll just do a yarn install and this will download the dependencies, and I'll be good to, yeah, I'll be good for my next thing. I'll be good to run this. So it seems we are good. My errors are gone. So what I can do is I'll simply just zoom the things. I'll simply do a yarn start, which will, let's see what it does. So it says that cannot find the module, blah 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 blah, probably because I don't have, I need to compile it first. That's my mistake. So I will do yarn, or I can simply do yarn dev, which will also do the same thing to run it in a dev mode. And let's go to the local host 3000. And since I'm using a JSON server, it gives you a nice UI like this. And now I have the resources under that. So I have Instagram post, which is configured using a /post here. So if I click on a /post, it gives me all the posts that I have in my db.json. So congrats, you successfully created your web service in a Node.js in a TypeScript. If I have to just compile that, I can do yarn build or the start or all those stuff. Don't worry about the code. I'll link the GitHub repository link in the description. You can check it later. And I want to tell you that this video has been inspired by this Medium article by this guy, Rus Slow. And he has described all the things like to get started with the Nomad from the scratch. So if you are interested, so I'll link this Medium article in the description. Please go through, read it. It's really nice. That's how I also learned few new things from it. Now, this is a simple Node.js application which is working perfectly fine. Now, let's Dockerize this. And Dockerizing thing is always a fun. I always love this. So I'll create a Docker file like this, and inside this we are going to write instructions for the Docker, that how you should package my application into a Docker image. Okay, so let's write some Docker. I'm using a Node.js 21 version. That's why from Node 21, which is the Node 21 Docker image, set a working directory to user src app, then copy the package.json and the yarn lock. I'm using yarn as a package manager. That's why if you're using npm or pnpm, then you have to change this name. Then install the dependencies for required for this application, then copy all the stuff that you have in the directory, and at the end expose that over the port number 3000. And how we run it, yarn start is the command through which we basically start our application. And this should be enough to make a Docker image out of our application. And you need to have a Docker install. So if you are on a Linux, then you can install that through a command line, or if you are using a Mac, then you need to have a Docker desktop. And it just basically start the Docker daemon and the Docker engine and list out the Docker images what you have here. Package these things into a Docker image, and we do that with the Docker build command. So Docker build, then we provide a -t just as a tag, and then we give a name to this. So I'm going to call this as an Instagram post, and this will be my latest Docker image. So this will basically look for the Docker file in the current directory, and from that Docker file it's going to build an image. So if I do this command, it says require exactly one argument, Docker build URL path. I have to give the directory which is going to be like the current directory, so I forgot this dot. So now this should work. So this is packaging the stuff. As you can see that it basically pulls out some images for the node. It pulled out the Node.js image, and then package all the dependencies and then export it to an image. So we should have a Docker image. So if I do Docker images, it should give me an image that is created. So as you can see that I have a new image which is created just 14 seconds ago, which is 1.21 gigabytes. This should not be this much big because we are packaging everything in it, like the node modules and all that. Ideal that is not required. You just need like the app.js, and this will be like few kbs, but for the time being, I guess I have done this mistake to copy everything. It should not be a scene actually in the real scenarios. This is my mistake, sorry for that. Okay, now we have a Docker image for our web service. Now what we have to do is deploy it over the Nomad as we deployed the HTTP echo some time back. And thing with the Nomad is that it basically pulls out the images from the Docker Hub. In the case of the HTTP Echo, it pulled it out from the Docker registry, Docker Hub. But we have this image Instagram post which is not present over any Docker Hub, which is just present locally. And I don't want to push this to a Docker Hub because this is my custom application. It is my sensitive application. Let's say I don't want to push it to a Docker Hub. So in that case, how we can do that? So in that case, we have to change the configuration of your Nomad job file a little bit. So I'll create a new Nomad configuration file. Let's call this Instagram post dot nomad dot HCL, and inside this we are gonna write our Nomad job again. Now you may not be ready for this, but get ready anyway, because this file is gonna have a bunch of concepts from the Nomad that will be completely new for you. But don't get worried, it is very simple. So what we are telling to Nomad, that I have a simple job called Instagram posts that need to use a data center DC1. I already showed you like why DC1, because that's a short name for our server, which is a leader server. Then I'm going to have a group, so you can have the group of servers, and I'm calling that as an Instagram post group. And inside that, count equals to 1 means that I simply want to use only one server for this. So this is the thing, like if you want to scale your services to something really tremendous, if you expect too much load, then you can provide a X count there, like let's say 10, that will host your service on the 10 different server. Then there is a task, which is the actual task, which is node. I'm calling it here because it's a Node.js service. You can name it like anything, but I just put a node. It doesn't have any compulsion with that. So driver Docker, you put it as a Docker because this is the Docker image. And then from where I'm going to grab that Docker image, I'm going to specify like artifact source is this. I'm going to host my Docker image over the 8080 port. I have just created a Docker image 8. Now I have not hosted. I'll show you like how to host that in the next steps. But we are going to pull that Docker image from the localhost 8080, and that's where we are avoiding to pull it from the Docker Hub registry. We don't want to use Docker Hub registry. This is my sensitive application, and we are going to just host it over the localhost. Option archive false because we don't want to archive this image. It's already archived. Then the CPU here, this is the cool stuff that I like about the Nomad. It gives you full control over like how many CPU you want to allocate for this job. So I'm going to use like a 500 gigahertz and the 256 megabytes of memory for this job, which in my sense actually really cool, because you basically restrict that, or basically put a limit that okay, this service is gonna need this much of resources, and you can restrict the usage of your computation resources. In that way you will not have your server drain of the resources and ultimately it crash because of the load. So this is a really cool feature of the Nomad. Then the service, it is node service port HTTP, then interval 10 second, which is just like a check if the service is running or not, just to like keep on track of that. The node environment is a production. Remember this, and this is for like passing the environment variable. So if you are using environment variable to connect with the database, for example, you can save them in a node environment. You can, and usually we store the database or anything sensitive data in the node environment. So we can pass the node environment. So similarly, you can pass like a database credential, database connection string, the database server URL, username, password here in the env, and that will be read by your application. This is one way, and the more smarter way, if you are curious to know, is through a Vault. Vault is again another application from the HashiCorp in which you can store your all the credentials, and Nomad job configuration file will read the credentials. We will read those credentials and will assign that to environment variable. And that's all pretty much. Here we have our Instagram post Nomad configuration file ready. Let's hit this command docker save -o Instagram post star Instagram post. So this is gonna export my image, namely Instagram post, into a file name called Instagram post.tar. And I will hit this command. It will take some time, and it seems that response from daemon reference not exist. I have a typo there. I gave the Instagram, and here I have extra a. So I'll just correct that, and this should create a .tar file here in the current directory, which will be an export of my Docker image. So there we go. I have a temp file, and in some seconds I'll have the Docker file. So yeah, all right, I have it now ready. Instagram post.tar is there. Perfect. We'll deploy this over the local host using a HTTP server. Use HTTP server and I'm gonna run that over the port 8080, and I want to keep the cards and I want to run that in the existing directory. So I'll just execute this command, and this should, on my 1990 port, I have my Instagram post.tart, which is exposed over HTTP server, so it should be accessible for my Nomad job file to download. Finally, we are gonna run this. So let's see, command is nomad job run, then we pass the name of our configuration file. So let's hit enter, and let's see if it works, and it has started a deployment. If we see the nomad jobs, I have a status that it is deploying that. Somehow it is not able to download my image for some reason. Bad response 404, it is not found. Okay, I get that. Probably it is about to deal with again my typo, so it should be good now. So I should clear this, and to stop the nomad job you have to stop it elegantly. So if I take you to the browser, and if I take you to the nomad web UI, you can still see like it is still running, though it is failed, it is still trying restarting. So we need to stop this elegantly. So the command for that is nomad job and stop. Then we have to give a name of the job name, which is Instagram post, and it should stop that. So if I take you here, now it says that it is stopped. So this is the elegant way. Okay, so now let's run it again. Nomad job run Instagram post, and this time it should, and this time it is running. Okay, I don't see any errors. I say status healthy, and if I go to a jobs, yeah, it's healthy. I have my Instagram post finally running. Okay, but how we know like it's running? If I take you to the 3000 port, which was our original port, so it should be running our application, which was on JSON server on 3000, and wow, it's working. Amazing. So we did this, and if I click on the post, yeah, I have my Instagram post on the through a REST API through my Node.js service on the 3000 port, so it's working perfectly fine. Well, we managed to do it. So this was a quick demonstration of how we can deploy our custom services. In this example, I built it using a node. You can technically build it in anything, fast API, Python, Rust, or whatever. It should be a Dockerize image, whatever you have in an image, you can run it as a job in a Nomad. So Nomad is a really good tool in terms of the orchestration. There are a bunch of other features like the topology and adding more client server. You can specify like how many resources you want to use. I already show that in a job file, but you can also see a live view of like how many resources are being consumed, specify the variables, environment variables. There are other tools like the Vault I said, which does a really good job in terms of storing the credential. You also can do a load balance using Fabio and all that. But in this video, I keep my focus on explaining the Nomad. Like if you are interested in knowing other tools from the HashiCorp, like the Vault, Fabio for the load balancing, then do let me know in the comment, and I'll be happy to do a separate dedicated video on those topic. The source code for this example I have linked in the description. I put all the commands that I was using in this video, like the installing the Nomad, Consul, creating a Docker image, exporting, all that stuff. I put all the command in the file in the description, so you can check that. And if you really found this video helpful, then subscribing to my channel is a really great way to show us support. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.